You mentioned moving up or moving back. What is your philosophy on draft night trades?
Yeah, we like to trade, and typically we'll, if there's a good player within range, we're going to go get them. But if we have 3 players we like and we can move back a little bit, we'll do that as well and try to, get some more draft capital, definitely.
You heard him, Broncos country. General Manager George Paton likes to trade, but will he make a move Thursday night to snag one of this year's top quarterback prospects? We'll discuss that and some of their other options on tonight's edition of Broncos Beat. As always, I'm your host, Alexis Perry, joined by a few of my favorite draft enthusiasts. James Palmer from the NFL Network, coming at us from, where are you, James?
I'm inside the Jacksonville Jaguars Stadium right here in Jacksonville all week for the draft. I mean, could anything be better than this? What's the weather like in Denver right now? Because right now, I'll tell you the weather forecast for Jacksonville. Perfect.
It's competitive here in Denver today, for sure. Of course, we have Cecil Lammey from 104.3 The Fan. And you guys, the man behind NFL.com's full 7-round mock, Chad Reuter. Now, Chad, I've been following your extensive mocks throughout the offseason, but this most recent one really caught my eye because so much of the conversation has been the Broncos needing to trade all the way up to number 4 to get one of these elite quarterbacks. But you have them getting one at 7 thanks to a mock trade with the Detroit Lions. So, Chad, why do you think a deal between the Broncos and Lions could actually happen on Thursday?
Well, the only thing that we know is that whatever we say in late March and early April is not what's going to happen in late April, early May. Other than Trevor Lawrence going to be a new Jaguar, which the people in Jacksonville are very excited about. But other than that, I think it's interesting to see what may happen that people don't think about it. And Justin Fields is not a lock to be a top 4 pick. And at the 3rd pick, with San Francisco, it really seems to be Trey Lance or Mac Jones, one of those 2. So that means that Justin Fields could be available at 7 or 8, which means that teams, not only Denver, New England, Chicago, Washington, maybe, it's going to be a hot mess there at 7 or 8. So I figured, well, look, the Lions are great to trade down, but if they could only move down 2 spots and still get the guy they want, that would seem like a marriage made in heaven for those 2 teams to get together. So, hey, let's see what happens.
Chad's right. Most of the people I've talked to, obviously Mac Jones has been talking to the 49ers. I know people in San Francisco have been talking to those around Trey Lance extensively over the last month. So that really does appear to be the 2. But you have to find out what happens there before you move back. And everybody talked about trading at number 4, but you look at the ransom that was given up, Cecil, for the 49ers to move up to 3. A lot of people think the price tag might be too high at 4. So is it more realistic to move to a number like 7 if Justin Fields is available? It seems like it would be an easier spot to trade with. And it would be something that happens probably once the draft starts, you start having that dialogue. But at the same time, Cecil, we did realize that George Paton was very open about saying he likes to collect picks. The more darts you can throw, the greater chance of succeeding. You lose some of those by moving up.
Well, deals come at deadlines in the NFL. We all know that. And there's the ultimate deadline on Thursday. It's the first round. It's put up or shut up time. So is it Trey Lance at 3? That's when the draft begins, in my opinion. And we'll see what Atlanta does at 4. Are those jumps too much for the Denver Broncos at this time? Too much for a lot of teams. That's why we're seeing patience there. And then you get to Cincinnati, and then you get to Miami, who's already said that they've moved back. They've moved up. They'll move back again. That's right. Kind of been advertised out there. So I think 5, 6, 7, that's kind of a sweet spot in the first round. If someone like Justin Fields, maybe Mac Jones slides and the Broncos want to jump. But remember, it's going to be very competitive because now New England is that team that you think they're going to be the most aggressive to get Justin Fields. The Broncos themselves, if they like Fields, if they like Jones, they're going to have to prepare to be very aggressive too.
All right, well, to throw a wrench into all of this, James Palmer, you were on the NFL Network's mock draft live show yesterday, and you had the Broncos taking Mac Jones over Trey Lance at number 9. So I know you really had to think on your feet in that situation, but why Jones over Lance?
My feet are firmly planted in the ground on this pick, Alexis, but this is why I did it. Justin Fields was taken number 3 by Mooch, Steve Mariucci, who had the 49ers pick, and I just don't see that happening. So that changed everything. And I had the ability to go with either Mac Jones or Trey Lance at number 9. And I really do believe if they go with quarterback at 9, they would pick Mac Jones over Trey Lance. I just really believe from talking to people and my gut that would be a guy that they seem as a better fit for what they want to do. He's better prepared right now, decision-making, processing, how he can go out there and play, the talent level he played against in the SEC compared to how raw George Paton and company think Trey Lance actually is. So I know I got a lot of heat on Twitter for that, and that's cool. That's fine. But I do believe, and I stand firmly, that it would be Mac Jones over Trey Lance.
I think I saw somebody threaten to light your car on fire?
Yeah, set my car on fire. That definitely happened. Yeah.
Oh gosh.
To me, if Denver picks a quarterback, and we've talked about this before, he's got to be ready to play because he's got to compete with Drew Lock, and Mac Jones is ready to go. There's things we don't know about him, but I totally agree with James on that. And Trey Lance may not be ready to go. So I think that's why 49ers may actually like him, because he could play behind Jimmy G this year. Carolina might like him because he could play behind Sam Darnold this year. So it makes all the sense in the world to me that if the Broncos were in that situation between those two guys, that they take Jones.
Well, and here's the thing, Lance, in my opinion, is more ready to go than some people think, because if the play breaks down, he'll just take off and run. And that's an asset that Mac Jones does not have. So if you're the Denver Broncos, you're going to have a difficult decision if Trey Lance and Mac Jones are both on the board. I think, by the way, if the 49ers take Trey Lance, he better be ready to go, because Jimmy Garoppolo is going to play, 7 games? So, I think
like him to play all 17.
Yes, they would. But I think that Lance might be thrust to be more pro ready than some people think.
All right. Well, in case you guys didn't know, there are some really good players in this year's draft that actually aren't quarterbacks. Shocking. I know. We'll discuss some of the other positions the Broncos may look to bolster on draft night coming up after the break. Well, the last time you and I talked prior to free agency, you said that you would be prudent during that window, and that you were. You set this team up really, really well heading into the draft. So how does free agency impact now your priorities on draft night?
Yeah, it's huge because we were able to fill some needs on defense. So now we can take the best player available. We won't have to reach for a need, because we don't have any glaring needs. So we can really, especially at number 9, we can trade back, we can move up, we can take the best player. We have flexibility throughout the board.
Welcome back to Broncos Beat. George Paton's first free agency in Denver was a memorable one as he pieced together what looks to be, on paper, one of the league's best defensive units for the upcoming season. Specifically in regards to how it set up the Broncos for the draft, James, how would you grade Denver's free agency window? And do you feel like they missed out on any position that would have put them in a better position heading into the draft?
I love what George Paton did in free agency, Alexis, and I'm not alone. Talking to enough people around the league, they love the way he was able to bring Kareem Jackson back at a fraction of the cost that he was originally slated to do. The patience that he had there, the patience he had with Kyle Fuller to go out and get him and acquire him the manner which he did. You get 2 corners. You evaluate also the pass rusher class that went on that first day, right? Cecil, you saw there was an annual salary of $15 million with those guys. And he was patient waiting before he made the decision on Von Miller and goes, well, at 18 million, Von's better than these guys at 15 million annually. So let's just, extend that option and keep him for another year. I think he really waited things out. I don't think he's done by any means. Keep an eye on the quarterback spot after the draft, perhaps Teddy Bridgewater, if they don't draft a quarterback at 9. I do think the way he has had patience throughout this free agency and filled some much needed spots doesn't mean they're secure in those spots, but they're in a far better position than they were before free agency started.
Yeah, you look at free agency, you give George Paton an A. If you look at the way it sets up the draft, the grade's lower because of the 1-year deal for Kyle Fuller. We all love the idea of Fuller here, and he's going to be fantastic, but it's only 1 year. You still need a corner. I know in January I would have said they're going to take a corner at number 9. I still might say that. Now we'll talk quarterback and other positions and all those sorts of things, but it definitely changes it when you look at that perspective of how did it set up the draft. Maybe not as strong as some would think.
All right, guys, I threw out a poll to Broncos Country last night, and the very slight majority said that they hope to see the Broncos stay put at number 9 and take the best player available. So given how this draft is likely to play out, Denver would have their pick of the litter when it comes to one of these non-quarterbacks here at number 9. So who do you think is one non-quarterback player that George Paton is just praying falls to number 9?
Well, I love the fact that they would still think about cornerback because of what what Cecil just said. And some of these guys only wanted 1-year deal because of the salary cap situation. But Micah Parsons, my gosh, what a linebacker that would be for this team. If they could plug him in, allow him to make plays all over the field, that's a guy that I think would be great for them at 9 if they stayed put.
And you know what? That is a connection, Chad, that has been said around some league circles, because obviously we know Vic Fangio has been very picky about that middle linebacker spot and who he sees fit. And some people do believe Parsons fits what Vic Fangio is looking for at that middle linebacker spot. That's a definite name. And the cornerback, I want to go circle back to this, what Cecil said. Talking to enough people in the building about who went where and what visits they were paying a lot of attention to and which pro days they were going to. When they made both those moves in free agency at cornerback, Cecil, they did not stop attending those pro days, those top corners. They were still going out there in full effect after those deals were made. So you do have to still look at that corner spot. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe one of those 2 tackles falls to them. That's not a bad pick if that happens to you at 9, but I think corner is definitely still in play. But Micah Parsons starts to be a name that you're hearing a little bit more a couple of days heading into this draft.
Yeah, and it would be the one spot where George Paton has yet to fill. You know, Alexander Johnson, Josie Jewell, fine players in their own right. Micah Parsons is different. He's a new generation at that linebacker position with that speed and athleticism to cover with the nose for the football, with the attack mode that he gets in on the football field. And speaking
rush
of
the passer.
Attack mode, yeah, rush the passer. I'd say Patrick Surtain, if we're going to get specific at corner. If you move back, J.C. Horn's more of an opportunity there. But Surtain is a player that has those sound tackling abilities. What's the one thing we know about Vic Fangio? You got to be able to tackle. He loves that type of ability. Surtain has that. He has the football intelligence. He's got the ability in coverage. So he would be a player, if the Broncos stay at 9, cornerback's that option.
Okay, Cecil, you also mentioned trading back. You know, here as we take a look at the top 15 players on Dane Brugler's big board, who will have to be off the board or what will have to happen early in the draft to cause the Broncos to trade down?
Yeah, I would say Parsons might be that guy, right? If we see maybe even trades that leapfrog the Denver Broncos that aren't for quarterbacks. Let's say, for example, if the Cowboys move up for Surtain, I know they really like him in his game as well. So if a couple of these players are off the board and the Broncos feel like they can move back and still get that J.C. Horn type of player, a fine prospect in his own right, that's where the Broncos may be leaning, and then get some more picks, which we know George Paton in his history with the Minnesota Vikings, he certainly covets more picks.
Yeah, and I think Jawan James, depending on what happens with him, right, James, with that situation, if they're not sure about him, and as you mentioned, they like the offensive tackle, Rashawn Slater has a lot of Tristan Wirfs kind of vibes to him. Ooh. And he could be a guy that is available at 13 or 14, like Wirfs was last year, where a lot of people didn't think he would be. So if you can get a Slater in that 13, 14 range after all, because of his lack of length and other things, then maybe the Broncos could sign him up if they're able to trade back a few spots.
James.
Yeah, I think the other interesting part about this is and it always ties to the quarterback, right? If the quarterbacks don't fall the way Denver likes them, and I've been told for months now that they don't love all of their options, and their options would be 3 guys, right? We know what's happening at 1 and 2, and I've been told they're not in love with all of them. So if it doesn't fall the way they want, then maybe trading back with a team that really does love one of those guys still allows more guys to get closer to you that are on the top of your board if you move backwards, if quarterbacks that you don't like keep going ahead of you. So you could put yourself almost, guys, going back a couple spots in the same spot you were if the quarterbacks that are available are the ones that you don't like.
All right, guys, still to come on Broncos Beat. What would a successful 2021 NFL draft look like for the Denver Broncos? These guys will answer that on the other side of the break. In your mind, what will a successful first draft here with the Denver Broncos look like?
Yeah, that we just get a bunch of good talented players with high character that can come in and really help our football team, whether it's a starter, whether it's a special teamer, whether it's a backup, just help our depth and really, help the locker room, and that's what we'll be looking for.
Well, we just heard what General Manager George Paton would consider to be a successful draft. So now I want to pose the question for you guys. What will have to happen Thursday through Saturday for you to say to yourself, the draft could not have unfolded any better for the Denver Broncos?
Yeah, no more holes. That's what
Ooh.
I'll say. Everyone will say the quarterback position. Yeah, that's part of it as well. And I think the fan base is kind of clamoring for that. But no more holes on this team. Add that better depth. That's the thing. When you look back at the Broncos, even last year, before the rash of injuries, you thought they got a nice 22. They don't have a nice 53. Get them closer to that 53 number where your depth is going to be tested. Any team that makes a deep run in the postseason or a run at the postseason at all usually has fantastic depth. So have that depth ready to go, players that you believe in, this new look Denver Broncos under George Payton. I would like to see holes plugged, depth established, and yes, of course, quarterback.
I like that talk. Cecil, but at the same time, you didn't really tell me any positions. I mean, come on now. I will say this. One part that I hope they fill is another running back to this backfield because of what happens at the quarterback spot. If you don't get a quarterback at 9, you would love another running back to help out alongside Melvin Gordon for Drew Lock. If you do get a quarterback, you'd love a running back in the backfield to help out that young quarterback with a better run game alongside Melvin Gordon. So if you can maybe mill the trigger at that second, third round with a running back, to me would be a really nice play in this draft. And then honestly, what happens at 9, let's just see, right? I think some other spots also adding depth on the offensive line. And if you can find corner help as well, I think those couple spots, and Cecil's right, the 22 you look at for the Broncos, you go, this team's not bad. But if guys start going down, they got some issues right now.
Well, yeah. And the other thing that I look for in every team is the general manager looking to 2022, not just 2021. And you've got free agents like, Johnson and Jewell at linebacker,
Von
Gordon,
Miller.
and Freeman and Gordon at running back, just like you said. So you need to be able to build your team. They provide depth this year, but then they got to be able to get into these spots in the following year. So for any team, especially the Broncos, you've got to be able to do that. And if they don't pick a quarterback at 9, they got to look at Kellen Mond, or they got to look at one of these other guys later that can compete for playing time in 2022 if 2021 doesn't work out for Drew Lock.
James, is there a position that you'd like the Broncos to just ignore completely?
Wide receiver.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think you really need to address the wide receiver spot when you've used, second round pick in Cortland Sutton, first round pick in Jerry Jeudy, second round pick in KJ Hamler. Tim Patrick has emerged as a really good player. I think that's a spot you really don't need to worry about within this draft. I think there's many other holes, as Cecil said. I think that's one position you don't really need to have too much concern.
Okay, Cecil, give me one day 2 guy and one day 3 guy that you think would be a perfect fit for the Broncos.
Boy, James is going to love this answer. Day 2 guy, let's go Khalil Herbert, right? Contractually obligated to talk about Khalil Herbert.
Have to, yeah.
He's got shades of Dalvin Cook to his game. That's what you want. The second one, day 3 pick. Saw him down at the Senior Bowl. You saw him at his pro day, James. Shai Smith. Yeah, get a playmaker. You can never have too many playmakers. And if you're taking one in the 7th round, and a guy that has that ability, kind of that untapped potential, could be a much better pro than he was a college player. So yeah, I will throw some love for a wide receiver, regardless of what my friend James Palmer said.
Hey, what's funny, Steve? I watched him. Vrabel worked him out at the pro day. Said, listen, I want you to be Allen Iverson. When you get out in these option routes that we're running with you, I want you to be crossing guys up and determining which way you're going to go. It was fun, all the extra work that he got to see him go out there and work for scouts.
Chad, anybody? Day 2, day 3?
Well, yeah, and I think a guy that I really like in Denver's system is Taquan Graham as a 5 technique defensive end out of Texas. He played inside for them, but boy, I just think he's got some Draymond Jones. You can never have enough guys on the outside, helping out this
Draymond
defensive
Jones,
line.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, so, and I'm not sure how you guys feel about the return specialist for Denver, but if you wanted a guy that could really be solid there, then you might look at a receiver, right? Like a Dax Milne from BYU, some of this guy that could be 5th, 6th, 7th round guy that could really, give some competition at punt and kick return for the Broncos. So that's what I was thinking for them.
Yeah, I think as long as Deontay Spencer doesn't change direction 5 times and start running the other way, like he did that one play last year, he's in a good spot. But okay, guys, before we go, I have to get your predictions. And I'm not putting any parameters on this. I'm not saying at number 9. So this could be anywhere in the first round. Who do you think the Broncos will draft Thursday night? Who are we talking about next week? James, start us off.
Going with Justin Fields. I'm going with Justin. I'm going with Justin Fields because I think Mac Jones is going to be off the board, and I don't think they like Trey Lance. And I think they're going to see that Justin Fields might be the guy that's available to them, and they want to go and fix the quarterback spot in the one way John Elway had never attempted to. He tried free agency, he tried bringing back starters that they've had. He tried to develop guys. He never took somebody at the top of the first round. George Payton's going to go do that.
See?
Yeah, it's Justin Fields. It's Justin Fields. If you're saying not at 9, just however they can do it, Justin Fields is that guy to come in and start from day one. A new era for the Denver Broncos if Justin Fields is selected on Thursday.
Chad?
Well, Justin Fields forever. I put it in the mock draft. But look, I want to be a little bit different. I want to give a little bit different flavor. Micah Parsons would be so awesome in the middle of this defense. It really could kick the whole defense up a notch.
All right, so we have 2 Justin Fields. We have a Micah Parsons. I am going to go with Rashawn Slater. That's who I think the Broncos will take, and I will say specifically at number 9. But thank you guys so much for your amazing draft insight this entire offseason. This has truly been a blast. I'm so excited to talk about the newest members of the Denver Broncos this time next Monday. Until then, don't forget to tune in to our live draft coverage on all of the Broncos social and digital platforms 1 hour before the draft, both Thursday and Friday, and of course, about 10 minutes after they make their first and the second round picks. We'll see you then.